In today's video, I'm gonna show you how we take this closet from this to this. Now, let me show you how I did it. After installing the new rolling hardware on each door, I made sure to reinstall them and measure the height off of the ground because, as you may remember, there was green carpet in here before, and now that we took it out, the doors are a bit too short, so we're gonna have to add some wood to make up that difference, very similar to how we did it in last week's video. And we are also going to be installing new handles on all the closet doors, and the old ones were a little bit difficult to get out, but I eventually got them. And also there was a mirror on one of the closet doors held in place by 6 really heavy duty anchors that were near impossible to take out. I really struggled with this one, and I did get them out, but left quite the damage behind. And for the trim on all the doors, we decided to save some money by buying one 4x8 sheet of 1/8 inch Yucca board that we could rip down to 3.5 inch strips. I was originally going to use my table saw for this, but it was a little bit dangerous. Is this even possible? Okay, maybe not. This is not going to end well. They're going to have to go get the track saw, unfortunately. So there we go, there's our 3.5 inch board. It's pretty repetitive, but it's not too difficult, so let's get to cutting. All right, so it's now time to add the trim to all of the doors. These are the 2 pieces that go along the sides of the door. I cut these about 1/2 inch long. So what we're gonna do is line them both up, make them flush on one end, then we'll mark this side and then cut it to length. Don't have much margin for error, so you gotta make sure it's perfect on the first try. First you need to plug it in. Sweet, perfect fit. Now we'll repeat that same process for the other side. Now to secure these boards to the door, we're gonna be using a 23 gauge pin nailer, but just to be extra safe, we're going to be adding as well some liquid nails to the backs of the boards to make sure they're fully secure. Now I can put it in place. You wanna be pretty precise because you don't want the glue getting everywhere. Now I can go ahead and pin nail it. I'm also nailing pretty much near the edge of the door because these are hollow core. I want to make sure I'm nailing into a nice piece of board, which is just on the perimeter. Then we'll repeat the same process for the other board. An added benefit to our 3.5 inch width boards is that it completely covers the old handle, as you'll see here. So now we can place our new handles in pretty much any location that we want. Now that the 2 sides are installed, we can go ahead and add the 3 horizontals, which are gonna go at the top and bottom, and then 1 in the middle. And you'll notice that we did not Bondo the bottom board that we added, the 2x4, and that's because, as you can see, it's fully covered by this board, which saves us a lot of time. It also gives us a really nice nailing surface. Now we'll go ahead and move to the top. And now the top and bottom are done, the final one is the middle. And we decided to add one in the middle just because we thought it looked a little bit nicer and it'll match the other interior doors that we have that already have some trim. And we measured this so that it was 36.5 inches from the bottom. That way it matches everything else that's already in the house. And then we're almost done. The last step is to caulk everything. Actually, before caulking is sanding. We're gonna go ahead and hit this with 220. This knocks down any of the nail holes that kind of protruded, blends all the seams, as well as this is pretty smooth surface, so we wanna rough it up a bit so the primer sticks a little bit better. Now it's time to caulk, but there's obviously a lot of debris on here, so we're gonna go ahead and spray it off.
Bang! You know, I'm really gases. Bam!
So we are just about ready to paint. However, we decided that there's a few gaps that we want to fill, so we're going to use some Bondo to do that. It's just because when we installed the Yucca board, some of the pieces weren't perfectly at a 90-degree angle, and there's just a few hairline gaps. We probably could get away without covering them, but we think it'll be better just to do it now, and that way the doors will look perfectly smooth. This stuff dries really fast, so you got to work quickly as soon as you add this hardener. So I'm just going to go around and do all of them as fast as I possibly can. We'll see if Bianca can keep up with the camera.
All right. It's also incredibly pungent. Although Grant's only adding a tiny bit, and we really think it'll make a big difference in the end. Also, this little bit of Yucca board I think makes a big difference too on these doors.
It's only 1/8 of an inch thick, but because of the way the light will hit it and the shadows, it'll actually look pretty significant. It's already starting to harden a little bit, so that's how fast it goes. You don't have much time to spare. So you want to mix it in relatively small batches.
You're doing great, sweetie.
Thank you. All right, now we'll let it dry. It should only take about 15 minutes, especially with how small these gaps are. Then we can go ahead and give it a final sand before we then prime and paint.
But while we wait for these to dry,
we're actually gonna go up on the roof, and you'll see why in just a minute.
You guessed it. We're cleaning our gutters. I've never been on a roof before. This is wild.
Did you bring a bag?
No. I was too scared to climb with it. Wow, there's so much stuff up here, Grant. This was Grant's idea. I wanted to pay someone to do this. Oh God. Oh my God, this is so bad. Guys, this is the joys of home ownership. Oh my God.
Oh, it smells so bad.
It smells like a swamp. Oh wow, there's a lot of bugs. This is so satisfying. That looks so much better already.
After spending a few hours cleaning all the gutters on the roof, we then set up the doors in the backyard to start priming. Now that the doors are primed, I gave them a quick sanding to knock down any high points and make them nice and smooth so we can start spraying our paint. After spraying them, we brought the doors inside and let them sit here for about a day or two to let the paint fully cure. And now we're gonna actually bring them back outside because we have 2 more things to do before we can install them.
Now in hindsight, I probably should have done these 2 tasks prior to painting the door, but I forgot, so we're gonna do them now. First up is actually gonna be cutting a groove on the bottom of the door. That way we can use a track guide once installed. Now that we have our cut marked out, you can see that all 3 of our screws are right in the middle of it, and you definitely don't want to cut through those. So I'm actually going to be using a brad nailer and brad nailing above and below all of these screws, and then taking the screws out. That way we can make the cut safely. I was going to use my table saw for this cut, however it felt a little precarious and not that safe. So I'm actually going to be using my circular saw and just doing it freehand, but I think I can still get a pretty accurate cut. And now it's time to make our cut. Now that the groove is cut at the bottom of the door, we can go ahead and move on to our second task, which is installing the door handle. Now it's very common for bypass doors to have a circular handle, but we decided to go with this rectangular one because it looks a little bit more modern. However, there's a bit more work involved when installing it. With the round ones, you can just use a hole saw, but in this case, we're gonna have to use a router. I like to completely tape off the surface, that way I don't mar the surface with my router, and also I can use my pen to make marks without damaging the paint. Now this one's a little bit tricky because there's not much margin for error when using the router, and I'm gonna be doing it freehand, but I think I got this. All right, this door's done. Let's bring it inside. All right, let's put it up. Sweet. The last step before we can call these doors officially done is mounting in this little piece at the bottom. That way it keeps the doors from swinging in and out when you move them. The whole reason I routed the groove at the bottom of the doors is to hide this hardware. However, the way that these are currently mounted, you're going to end up seeing half of this outside of the door. So we're gonna go ahead and cut them off and drill some new holes. That way you don't see them at all. Now I'm actually gonna tape out where the door specifically ends so I can perfectly place the tracking guide inside the door. The reason I'm taping it out is because I'm actually gonna have to take these doors off in order to install it. So this tape marks the edge of the door, and now I'm gonna use a pen to mark specifically where the groove is. But first I'm gonna make sure to swing out the door until it's perfectly plumb, then I'll make my mark. And now that we have our marks in place, we can go ahead and take the doors off. Now that those are out of the way, we can go ahead and drill in our guides. Now, let's put the doors back on. Now, this part's a little bit tricky because you actually have to completely take off the bracket that sits in the track up here in order to set the door in place on top of this. Then you can kind of angle it into position and then re-screw on the bracket. Very nice. There we go. Sweet. Job well done. Now let's take one look back at what the doors used to look like and what they look like now. It's crazy to think that those are the exact same doors, and I'm really proud of this transformation. This is a very budget-friendly option if you want to upgrade your closet doors without having to replace them, and I'll make sure to link all of the tools and products that we use throughout this video down in the description. If you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments and we'd be happy to answer them. And if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful, we'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button, as it really helps the channel out. And if you want to see more DIY projects like this as we continue to renovate our home from top to bottom, please subscribe, as we have a ton more projects in the works. And let me know what you guys think of how the doors came out. Would you paint them a different color, use different hardware? What do you think of the trim work? Was it all worth it? Was it too much labor? Let me know. And as always, thanks for watching and happy building. See you next time.